Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Chris McCabe of eCommerce Chris and also co-creator of the Seller Velocity Conference, which is coming up sooner than later in spring in New York City, May 1st and 2nd in Midtown Manhattan. One of our illustrious and very well-known and very well-respected speakers is Bradley Sutton of Helium 10. Bradley, how are you?
I'm doing just ducky, as my dad would say.
Awesome. I love that phrase. That's a good 80s into 90s phrase. So,
yep, old school.
Me and your dad need to hang out more.
Age ourselves sometimes with what we say.
Right. And also of the Serious Seller podcast. That you've got the hat on for that. Thank you for pointing that out. So let's talk seller velocity since we have you and since you're not on an airplane right now. May 1st, New York City, and your plan is to talk about common trends. Maybe you've got some examples that you want to cite, some success stories. What is your main focus this year?
I'm actually in the midst right now when we're recording this, coming up on March here, where I'm in the midst of like a 2-3 month case study I started where I hadn't launched products in probably like maybe a good 8 months, other than just like minor tests that I was running. But I'm doing I launched about 5-6 products over the next few months, and a few of them I launched just last week, so the data is still fresh. But I'm going to be giving a recap on what I found out about what is really working with launch in 2024, and especially as it pertains to my theme for kind of like this year is relevancy to the Amazon algorithm and how that's changing, or if it's changing. There's a lot of people who have theories and thoughts on how AI is changing, and sure, 4 months from now, it could completely change. But I think the fundamentals of listing optimization, keyword research is still going to stay the same, regardless of what Amazon does with AI. So instead of just talking about what my noggin thinks, I'm going to be just showing literally in action exactly what I did and how the Amazon algorithm responded to it, so that people can be able to take away some, not fluff, but just like, all right, hey, Bradley did this with a real product. I'm going to show it to them, and I'm going to go ahead and take these steps and apply it to my next product launch.
They'll try to replicate it themselves. Yeah. In a nutshell, very useful information strategy to have, right? We're talking all about high level strategies and how to take something you've already established. In most cases, most attendees will be established brands, not just kind of dipping their toe in. So they'll be looking to take things to the next level. I'm glad you brought up the AI bit, which of course is a very hot topic on LinkedIn at conferences, events, and so forth. But the fundamentals so far, I mean, you have to make a long-term play. You can't just look at short-term AI gains and make short-term plays. So in a world where the AI experience will involve new infusions of fresh data and people will be interpreting it and reinterpreting it throughout the year into next year, how do you kind of keep a cool head when you're bombarded with all this, try this, do that? Because you can't change strategies every 5 minutes, right?
Yeah. I go with just like, well, first of all, I'm not a huge adopter of AI. I use it for the podcast. We summarize AI. We get the transcript using AI. Some of Helium 10 is built on AI. Some things in our PPC and things like that. But as far as I'm now accomplishing 7 times as much with my daily activities because I'm using AI, that's not me. Like, I'm not doing much with it. I definitely see the potential. It's still fresh. Where it's needed, I'll use it. Like I needed to do some sponsored brand images, and I didn't want to make new images, so I was able to use the Amazon image AI, which is actually linked to Helium 10, to put out a couple AI image. A couple of it was great. A couple of it was ridiculous. I can never show this to the public. I'd be laughed at, So AI is still has a long way to go, but I say, hey, don't be too distracted where you're like, oh, I saw this webinar and I saw this podcast and this and this and that. I got to try all these things, and you start forgetting about the fundamentals of success on Amazon. If you see something that you haven't had the time to do, and now, or something that you're having to pay somebody 20 hours a week to do, and you see a clear path. I just need to implement this software, and it's gonna happen like that. Obviously do that. But the other stuff that's just kind of like, I'm not exactly sure how I'd use it, but it sounds cool. Let me go ahead and do it. Nah. So my advice would be to stay away from those for now.
Yeah, similar to what we see, there are some occasional innovators in the reinstatement appeals or suspension of accounts in ace and takedown space where, hey, I found like a magic key, so put it in every door and it's going to solve every problem now.
Yeah.
doesn't quite, that golden path doesn't quite appear for every problem all the time and all the bad things go away. And my sense is AI is going to follow along that same kind of path. I mean, temporarily there might be sort of an addiction to these AI gimmicks. Some of them will fall away. Some of them will turn into something, will flower into something more established that will be a long-term, usage. But do you see people making a lot of assumptions or mistakes just because, I don't know, they're consuming sheer amounts of content on AI, or are they just getting recommendations from people who are like, I think this is the new big thing. I'm not sure if it is or not, but that's the next thing. You can't fall behind. You got to win the arms race. You've got competitors doing this stuff. Do you think people get lost in that background noise, or they're just not separating the good data, good info from the bad?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I don't have solid data to say, oh yeah, I've there's this much percentage of people are kind of dropping the ball on this, but you could see screenshots of listings and stuff where people are obviously trying to automate some process of it, and then it breaks, but they don't even notice. It'll say like insert a compelling title here, but that's literally what the title says there, because whatever AI thing that they're using broke and it didn't transfer over. Even Amazon's own AI is just doing nonsense on review kind of like synopsises and stuff like that. But again, like it's there's nothing I can exactly put my finger on and say, hey, this is definitely a trend that's bad on this X, Y, and Z. It's more just like hit or miss, and that's why I tell people it's just like, hey, if it can help your business, by all means take advantage of it. But it's still, even in the good situations, it's not perfect. I think somebody ran my name or something through one of the AIs. It wasn't ChatGPT. It was something like, and it was like, oh yeah, Bradley 10 is the owner of Helium 10, and he is worth $1 million or something like that. I'm like, man, I wish both of those things were true, but that's just not that's just not true. And so sometimes I think people look at AI and say like, oh, whatever it does or says, it must be 100% correct, and it's just not.
You got a lot of name recognition. These are the perils of your notoriety, I think, from building over all these years. In terms of product launches, do people still approach you and say, I picked a category, I want you to help me find the best type of product within that category? Or do they ask you, like, what's the category that you're recommending that people sell in this year, this quarter, whatever? Or how are you helping people pick what product to launch before they even get started?
Yeah, a lot of people, say that sometimes, and I tell them the same thing. I'm like, no, don't start with a category or like that's not what just be wide open and look for where there is opportunity. I mean, there's opportunity in the cell phone case category somewhere, like maybe there's some obscure cell phone that nobody's making a case for. Well, like it's cliche to say garlic presses and cell phone cases and stuff like that, but I'm sure there's always sub niches out there. So what I would definitely say though is there may be some categories to avoid. Like if you just don't have the chops to do like medical devices and all the certification that comes with that, or you don't want to get involved with food items, or you're selling in Amazon Canada and you don't want to have to get, you shouldn't do supplements then probably, because it's completely different USA versus Canada. So maybe there's some categories to avoid, but when people ask about product research, there's a lot of new ways to find products, but a lot of the old traditional ways that have existed even before Helium 10, those methods are still completely applicable today, because yes, for every 5 niches or products that get completely saturated, guess what? There's 3, 4, 5 new ones that are invented out of thin air that nobody has ever heard of. So there's always going to be new product opportunity out there. I say don't box yourself into a certain sub niche just because that's what you're passionate about. You're going to limit your potential options.
Yeah, that's interesting because a lot of people say go with what you know and focus on a industry, a product type, something that you know well from a previous professional life, or something you know well just from knowing it well, from using it all the time and having an innovative mind. And you're kind of saying the opposite, really, to keep an open mind and explore different avenues based on your analysis of the types of data that you're running consistently, right?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. What other advice for, again, our conference, of course, aside from limiting the number of people, keeping it intimate, making sure the networking is solid? There's going to be a lot of discussion around by established brands around whether or not they should focus on launching new SKUs, maybe starting a new brand entirely. One of the things I've been talking with people at Amazon about is, is Amazon itself trying to promote people launching new accessories within their category, or are they trying to get people to open new accounts and attach a new brand to it? Because they've already succeeded with one or two or three or maybe more ASINs or within one category. So what do you kind of tell people? Hey, maybe look at, you've already aced this. You always have to keep an eye on your competitors and you've always got to keep your eye on the ball. But do you encourage them to just expand SKUs and accessories within a particular category? Or maybe look at it, starting a whole new brand in a different category?
Yeah, I like, unless you really have a really niche brand where you've already got some humongous off Amazon following, like you've got a humongous Facebook group or big community, a big mailing list where it's all about small dog lovers or whatever,
Right.
It's probably not the best idea to go and say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and sell, podcast microphones or something, and start from scratch. Could you do
totally
it? Sure,
unrelated.
sure. Nothing wrong with it. But
yeah.
When you have such a big off Amazon following, always the better bet is to double down on what you're doing. You've already got raving fans. It's much easier to sell to them as opposed to starting a brand new brand that has no brand recognition and try and convince people that you're legit and that you've got good products. So to me, it depends on how much off Amazon you have. But that being said, it's diversity is good. Like if you were only selling, PPE and masks and stuff, during COVID, and that was your only brand, your sales went to zero and you're now out of business, if that was your business model. But if you at the same time you were selling something a little bit more evergreen, maybe you started selling some water bottles or something like that, well, that's you're doing all right, so there's pros and cons of everything, but just understand what you're getting into. And again, my suggestion is, whatever new thing you do, whether it's new marketplaces, whether it's new brands you're trying to do, whether it's new products, make sure that you're not taking focus away from what's paying the bills right now. Because that's what I see sellers make a mistake. Like, oh, I'm going to go all in on TikTok Shop. TikTok Shop could even outdo Amazon on some products. Absolutely. But then it should never be, oh, I'm going to take the foot off my gas on Amazon. I'm not even going to look what's going on in my Amazon account for a month and a half or check my BPC because I got to focus all my time on TikTok Shop. No, now all of a sudden that's a detriment to your business. So always make sure you don't lose your focus is what I tell people, regardless of if you're starting new brands or not.
Yeah, and of course, we're always having that conversation on the compliance side and keeping an eye on account health and performance notifications, because sometimes people clear a problem to the side, and if we're not always working with them day in, day out, they go away for a while, and then we check in with them and they come back and like, oh yeah, we kind of took our eye off the ball a little bit. And some of those problems haven't quite gone away. That was my next question, actually, what you think top mistakes are that people are making, that you see, that you caution against. So that's one example. Yep. Can you think of another one or two things that, maybe not new this year per se, but things that with the increasing costs associated with selling on Amazon, with the increasing competition that we see within all categories, mistakes that people are making that are creating a detriment to their business growth?
I think it's not taking advantage of all the data that's out there. We as Amazon sellers are in such a unique position due to the tools like Helium 10, due to Amazon being so generous with all the data points that it gives itself. I was just on a podcast recently where I was talking about it, how people always want to talk about the negatives in the last few years of selling on Amazon. Hey, there's all these new fees. Hey, there's more competition, more Chinese factories are, more suspensions, whatever. But guess what, guys? For every, couple things that are negative, there's a positive. Years ago, people were paying Amazon employees like $10,000 and $20,000 for these ASIN reports that of their competitors that are not even 1/4 as good as what now Amazon gives to everybody for free in search career performance and brand analytics and stuff. And it's like, guys, do you not understand the power that Amazon sellers have compared to a few years ago with all the data that Amazon is giving out? I mean, Shopify owners can't, push a button and know exactly where their competitor is advertising for and what their impression share was and this and that. Like, brick and mortar store owners or brand owners, even less. It's like Amazon sellers, you guys have got so much data. And the mistake that a lot of them are making is they get analysis paralysis. They're just like, all right, it's just overwhelming. There's too much. I'm just not going to look at any of it. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Or they just go so deep into it, but they never actually take action on the cool things that they're learning from these data points. So I think that's just a year in and year out is a universal theme. It's always about something different. Search tree performance wasn't even out 2 years ago, but there's always a new thing on the block that I think is being underutilized because people just don't give it the time that it needs, or they're just too overwhelmed. But they got to find time to look at this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I assume there are people who approach you and say, I know this data is out there. I know it exists. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to interpret it. They must ask you for advice on where to start breaking it down, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Are people, and with all the offerings that Helium has, and maybe you can, cite examples or recent success stories, whatever you'd like, are people underutilizing what you guys offer? Like sometimes, they're a member, they have access to it, and maybe they don't join, a group chat, or they don't ask questions within your own channels and forums, and then they see the results of having failed to take advantage of it
all the time. When I talk to people, that's
we should have talked 9 months ago. Yeah,
it's like, oh man, hey, I got a new tool idea for you, Bradley. It would be great if you could do this. I'm like, yeah, we've had that for 3.5 years, right there. And
so, what example, which tool,
like,
that conversation happened the most with?
The no-brainer stuff is like, oh yeah, I wish Helium 10 had an automatic way to hit the request a review button because I don't want to get in trouble with seller support for making a custom email. It's like, dude, we got that. Like, what you see and follow. Sure, we have the ability to make custom emails, but I don't suggest anybody. I mean, it's a Helium 10 function, but I'll tell everybody, I'm never going to suggest that people use that Helium 10 function unless somehow you are a savant who can predict the bipolar Amazon algorithm about what is and isn't a good buyer seller message. For me, it's like, no, 100%. What I use is in follow-up, the request a seller review, which just is the same functionality as hitting that button, which Amazon will never be upset about, unless you're abusing it, like by sending them messages and doing that. Of course, that would be against terms of service. But stuff like that, it's like we've literally had that since almost before I worked at Helium 10, so 6 years now, and people don't realize we have that. We have smaller functions that maybe before, back in the day, were only for Helium 10 Elite members, like this what I call historical Cerebro, where I can look at what any keyword or what any product was ranking for going back 1-2 years in history. That was always an Elite, but like all of our Diamond members have had access to that for months now, and I would say a good 90% of Diamond members haven't even used that function, which is crazy. If I was still just a regular Amazon seller not working for Helium 10, I would probably pay $300 a month just for that. But 90% of Amazon or Helium 10 Diamond members probably aren't even using it because they don't even know it's there. So guys, I make videos every single week on YouTube and stuff about what is new in Helium 10, what is new in Amazon. Like not everything that Amazon puts out, Helium 10 has access to, but I'll still announce it. So on my weekly buzz videos, make sure to follow up because Amazon's releasing stuff, Helium 10's releasing stuff, and you guys are missing out, I think.
Yeah, speaking of weekly videos and buzz, maybe we can close with what predictions you have. We're about 2 months away from Seller Velocity in New York, where you'll be speaking. Any big stuff coming down the pike that you think will already be manifesting by May 1st, May 2nd in New York that you may be talking about that day?
Yeah, about the Amazon relevancy that I'm going to be talking about. There's different also ways to measure it. So I'm going to talk about that, and we've got some new tools coming out that helps you really see if your listing is optimized per the best practices of Amazon SEO that Helium 10 hasn't had in the past. It's not available as we're recording this, but I'm sure will be available before then. There's
Right.
there's a couple new AI things that we're coming out with. We have a specific team at Helium 10 that focuses on AI. So we're going to show, what new AI things that we have available. So yeah, for sure. Whenever I speak at a cool conference, like not every conference, I speak everywhere, but I can't like release something new every single week. But the big ones, or what I consider the important ones, which seller velocity is one, is like maybe there's something I can save until then, and then that's like the official release. So I'm sure I'm going to have something like that, and then by then also our new Freedom Ticket 4.0 is going to be out. That means 4.0. It's been 4 versions. Kevin King has made one every 2 years, with Helium 10 with guest instructors since 2017, 2016, and now 4.0 is coming out. You're going to be a part of it, and a lot of other guest instructors talking about a variety of subjects. So it's a great opportunity for even experienced sellers to kind of refresh their Amazon knowledge, but that'll be probably ready by Seller Velocity as well.
Awesome. So we'll have one of your special announcements for Seller Velocity this year in New York. Well, we're looking forward to having you. There'll be lots of great networking opportunities both days, May 1st and May 2nd. Thanks so much for joining us and for telling us, sharing your wisdom with us, telling us some of what you're going to be talking about in New York, and looking forward to seeing you. I guess I'll be seeing you before New York a couple of times, whether it's in the US or overseas, but looking forward to seeing you again in person.
Likewise.